Welcome to Between Two Chairs, Demystifying Commercial Real Estate, the podcast that brings you the latest insights and trends on the South Florida commercial real estate market, with your hosts, Fernando Arencibia Jr. and Jennifer Wollmann. In each episode, we dive into the world of commercial real estate and break down complex concepts to make them accessible for everyone. Whether you're a real estate professional, a curious investor, or just interested in the South Florida market in general, Between Two Chairs is the podcast for you. So pull up a chair and join us.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Between Two Chairs. We have a very, very special show and an incredibly special guest, special to us, and I think definitely to our industry here in South Florida. He is probably one of the oldest living members with a CCIM license. He always tells me, I think he's number 4 or number 5. He has a long career in commercial real estate in South Florida, not only as a real estate broker, but more significantly as an industrial developer. And I will say, before announcing his next endeavor in our industry, that one of the great things about this gentleman is that he's always an amazing help to everyone in the industry. He's always available for a consult. He's always available to help out and provide guidance and share his experience. And that's one of the many reasons why he is going to be the 2024 Chairman of the Board for the Miami Association of Realtors. So without further ado, our friend, our colleague, Mr. Gus Fonte.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Jennifer, Fernando. It's always a pleasure to hear Fernando expound wisdom and bluster.
I'm bluster. He wanted to call it BS, but he held
I
himself
did tell
back.
him there was a PG rating on the show.
Rating.
I did forget to say he is also an amazing Italian wine connoisseur.
Yes.
But I think it's only one area of Italy.
I'm expanding.
Look at him.
There's regions.
Absolutely.
So Gus, tell us a little bit about yourself, how AJF Properties came about, and just dive in to how you all got started.
37 years in commercial, in real estate, of which probably 36 and a half in commercial. AJF Properties is just a iteration of a brokerage so that I could just have my own brokerage. I had some companies with partners in the past, and I decided that wasn't going to happen anymore. So I think AJF, the entity's been around for 20 some years, but me, I'm 37. Had a CCIM since 1989, and yes, it's in the 4,000s. I think there's Ken Rosen is the only one I think beats me, because Ken is 102 now, I think. So,
wow.
No, I'm kidding.
Incredible.
we'll have to edit that one. He'll hear it and he'll call.
Yeah.
I got an email from him this morning.
Yeah, exactly.
I've done just about everything in terms of real estate. I got started in the business while I was in college because we bought an apartment building by Little Havana, or by the Orange Bowl in Little Havana, to park our cars. And subsequent to that, we sold it, made good money. And when I finished school and I wanted to figure out what to do, the only thing else I had ever done that would produce any type of a living was real estate, owning that building. Because like going out on Saturday nights that wouldn't produce any income. That was negative. So took my real estate class with CB, with Caldwell banker Joe Clark.
Wow.
And got to it. Yeah. And I think he's now passed away.
So you did what, 6 months of residential?
I did 6 months of residential, yeah, and it did not fit my personality. The color of the kitchen, the floor, and it just didn't work. I actually built We built a 23 home, single family home development I don't know what it's called now. It used to be Color Ridge. I don't know if it's Color Bay or whatever. It's off of the turnpike and way down there. And I didn't have the patience or tolerance for that. So went back into what I knew, which was apartment buildings, and migrated years later into warehouses. And that's it. Warehouses are the easiest to deal with.
Do you remember how you put that first deal together, the apartment building in Little Havana?
I bought it from Luis Zamora. I can drive you to his house right now if you wanted to. He's probably no longer with us. He had a little Home Depot for sale sign on the building. We walked by on our way to a football game, and we said, Jesus has a parking lot. We called him. He said, if you give me $10,000, I'll finance the other 40. He sold it to us for 50. It was a 4-unit, 2-story building with a garage in the back, which we, of course, converted to an efficiency. And there is a story about the efficiency, which I cannot do.
No, we'll do that over a glass of wine in private.
Yes.
Be careful what you say, because we don't know how to edit.
Yeah.
So
that was the first one. We bought it. We renovated it, did the windows, the floor, the plumbing, fixed everything up, rented it, and then sold it a few years later to somebody for $90,000. So, when you're in college, that 30 grand is crazy.
A lot of Saturday nights out.
A lot of Saturday nights. We spent probably $10,000 in materials and, did all the work ourselves. Actually, the roof on the building was done on a Saturday as a fraternity, shouldn't say hazing.
Initiation.
No.
Initiation.
A pledge project. I invited all the pledges onto the roof to spread the ceiling. So all that cost was beer.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Talk about a painting party, it's a roof party.
Well, plus you know so much about Miami. You're a native, so you've been here forever. So that's how he goes up, and he really does know everybody in the history.
But what I really want to know, when you bought the building, was it really for the investment, or you just wanted to have great parking in front of Orange Bowl?
We wanted to have the parking to be able to fit cars, because we would get everybody to come park. We could fit like 12 cars inside it and tailgate in the front and then walk over. We didn't really understand. I mean, my partner that I bought it with is Sergio Concepcion, and his dad was for a long time president of Ocean Bank, Pepe Concepcion. So he, used to manage a lot of apartment buildings for the Venezuelans that own the bank, and they talked to us about it when we were kids. Of course, we didn't really pay much attention, but we talked to him about it. He said, "Oh yeah, if that guy's going to finance it, go ahead and buy it, because it's a good deal in apartments." And he wanted to push us into real estate and away from just Saturday nights.
And it worked.
Yeah. Still did the Saturday nights for a lot of years after, but we started working. So I think I was 24, 25 years old when I got my license. And so considered my age now, I was relatively young at that point. And fresh, and I wanted to learn. So that's why I got into, CCIM classes and so forth.
So as we're going through kind of your origin story, how did you transition into your preferred asset class, which is industrial?
I met my business partner, president, which is Rene Vivo, during a transaction. The famous Canastilla Cubana on 49th Street in Hialeah next to Gus Machado. He was putting it for sale, and I was representing a company out of Columbia, Missouri, Storage Mart, that was looking for locations. And he had the listing, and they wanted something in Hialeah, so we worked a deal on that. During that deal, we had to create a zoning that didn't exist, and then zone this property to that zoning that didn't exist. So Renee and I did probably 10 or 12 zoning hearings and commission hearings, and we kind of bonded over that. And he did strictly industrial from his whole entire career. And we used to talk a lot about it. And one thing led to another, and we bought our first site to do a development in Hialeah. Never did it, flipped it, made $1 million. And I was like, okay. And then we actually bought our second one in Doral from Ernesto Campbell. Got to thank him. And we did our first industrial development, 68 unit, 120,000 square foot, multi-bay condo warehouse, street level, without knowing a thing about developing. The only thing I had ever built was the renovation on the apartment in Little Havana. So I went in there blind, and great market floats all your mistakes away.
So it's like that thing in sports that winning, fixes everything.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: as you're both a developer and an investor of industrial property. What is it that you really like about that asset class, but from those two perspectives?
So I had a daughter of a friend of mine yesterday who was shadowing me, poor thing. She's a real estate finance major from Florida State University, which, whatever.
Poor thing.
And he asked me why I like industrial. So if I have a 10,000 square foot warehouse, typically that'll have 10% office, 1,000 square foot office. If my tenant leaves, I can have them drop off a roll-off dumpster on a Friday, go to Home Depot, find 3 workers on a Saturday, paint the 1,000 square foot office, throw anything that's in the warehouse left into that dumpster. Monday, have it picked up and be ready to lease the space out. If I have a 10,000 square foot office and my tenant moves out, more likely than not, you're going to have to paint the entire office, which is 10,000 square feet, put new carpeting, try and find that one tenant that likes that build out that particular way, and or have to expend dollars in doing tenant improvements. That alone is much easier. Apartments, the thing I don't particularly like about owning multifamily is that the plumbing and electrical and roof always leak a Friday at 4:30 in the afternoon, whereas a warehouse, they are typically closed all weekend long. So if it leaks on Friday, you tell them we'll deal with it on Monday. In residential, you have to be much more attentive. So it's a combination of convenience and laziness why I do industrial.
And as a developer, how do you I know you have a perspective also on the ease of, not that there's anything easy in developing industrial real estate, but you've done it for such a long time. So what do you like that as a developer to develop industrial?
So I can't take ownership of this, but because Mr. Ed Easton, who is a titan in our business, told me the reason he likes industrial is you're building side and one story. If the economy goes bad, you drop a wall and you wait. If you're doing a vertical building, you once you start, you have to finish or abandon the project. But also it's and it's a function of having done it for so long that I consider it easy in terms of designing, because you have a piece of land, that's 40 something percent is where you're going to get as lot coverage. So you can pretty much pencil draw what you're going to do there. If you understand the market, whether you need street level, dock high, how tall your ceilings are, and where you're going to go and what your likely tenants are. With, office buildings, who knows who's going to move in or what. And it's the same thing with residential. It's just, not my preferred. Again, warehouses are much, much easier to visualize, spec, design, and build. You can put up a 50, 60,000 square foot warehouse in 6 months from the day you break ground.
Wow. So it's interesting that you went from multifamily to industrial. I follow this guy on Twitter named Commercial Real Estate Max, and he's a warehouse guy, and he wrote something that he thinks that there's a stigma, that the reason so many people invest in multifamily versus industrial is because there's a stigma associated with the word industrial. It just doesn't sound as sexy. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I'm the one who started that rumor to keep people away from industrial, so I just want to let you know that. So the big money, now you're talking the multi-billion-dollar REITs and investors, all understand industrial is the class to be in, and we're seeing everybody in our market here, where 10 years ago, 15 years ago, Hialeah was a local investor market. It's now become institutional. Anything that's over 30,000, 40,000 square feet, you can sell to an institution. I agree that it isn't the sexiest. I did a call this morning with my partners for a project that we're developing, which is a 110,000 square foot freezer building. And they want like these sexy colors and blue and like an ocean and all this stuff. And I said there and go, the tenant that comes could give nothing. They don't care. They want functionality, but you have to do it. But that's them fighting the stigma, because when they go out to raise public money, they like to show the pretty picture and make it sexier compared to the guy that's selling the office. To me, it's a box. If I can visualize the renter or the tenant or what, you figure out what they need, and you can spend some money in the entrance to the office or making the warehouse more functional.
So let me ask you about some of the transitions we're seeing in industrial, especially in areas like Hialeah and Wynwood, where that used to be where you'd go to get your car serviced, you'd go get the canvas for your boat fixed. And now those places have become way more retail oriented. The warehouse space has become more retail oriented. I know a lot of that is happening in Hialeah too, since they did some of the residential upzoning along the transit corridor. Tell us a little bit about that, how you think that's going to affect the overall market, especially for the smaller mom and pop users of the small bays.
So Hialeah, from a planning standpoint, is trying to get away from the old mom and pop mechanics. If you have one of those licenses and you close the business, they're not going to let another business with that license occupy. They're cleaning up. They've also, like many other cities, realized that a single story development or older building is capped on what they're going to produce in real estate taxes and income for the city on that part. So that's kind of the first push to develop or rezone or change the transit corridors and some other corridors that are kind of, the names are made up, but primarily on the main streets. I have property off of 26th in Hialeah and 10th, which 26th for Americans is Northwest 79th Street. But when you cross over, it becomes 26th or 25th. I'm sorry, because 26th is where my property is. So right around me, the 2 blocks, it's a company, a Coral Gables company. I'll remember their name. All the information is on my desk, but I can't reach it. They're doing a $150 million project directly around me. So now you talk about how you change the uses of warehouse. I have a warehouse that has an auto body mechanic, disaster mess tenant. Next door, I have another guy who buys and sells cars. So they're 4,500 square feet each. And that's the use. And then I have a 500 square foot cafeteria. When I end up with 1,000 units built up around me within, half a block to a block maximum, that's going to change the preferred use for me for that warehouse going forward. So that's a mom and pop business or whatever that will be displaced. I don't know where they'll go. That's one of the effects of the upzoning. The other crazy upzoning, and I've been reading, researching, listening. We did a talk yesterday with Miami-Dade County and about it, is the Live Local Act. And if it was on your list of questions, I'm going to do it now. So the Live Local Act, since it supersedes the zoning in individual municipalities, is going to be pretty crazy how it rolls out. I think there's a lot of people that have properties that fit into the zoning or fit into the category that could benefit from that, but really won't, because they're much smaller in size, and still it gets very expensive. But a concrete example, that land where I said we're building the 110,000 square foot freezer facility, That is in Miami-Dade County proper. It's on 27th Avenue in what I would call Alapata. That's 6.5 acres, and now under this Live Local Act allows you 250 units per acre with an unlimited height. So that greatly changes the valuation and the thought process and vision when you have that. And I think that's one of the things that's going to happen in the corridors in Hialeah and the corridors in city of Miami and some areas where you're going to be able to build. You have to do a minimum of 50 units, but you're going to be able to build some additional, which hopefully will help housing. But circumventing or going all the way back to what you said about the small mom and pop and those guys, I don't know where they're going to end up all going, because they've kind of been kicked out of Wynwood. They're still in Alapata, but Alapata's gotten so expensive that they ended up in that East Hialeah, Brownsville area, but nobody really wants them because it's, that's a dirtier business. I love them as tenants because, again, once they're in, as long as you can control their pollution discharge, they can't go anywhere.
And that's part of the issue, right? Because Hialeah is not the only one that is almost attacking this segment of that tenancy, and we see it all around the county. And so the question is, where are the mechanics going to go? And you're right, at some point, once they're in one place, it's unless they are displaced by the landlord, they're going to stick around for a long time. But what is going to happen? I know John Dom, always shout out to John Dom. He's always talking about this issue of, where we're going to get our cars fixed and where are the tractor trailers going to park, because that's another area,
The tractor trailers right now, there's 2 gigantic projects for tractor trailer storage that are being proposed off of 8th Street and 137th. Combined, it's close to 100 acres. They're 2 really, really big projects. So I think that area where it's agricultural land but can be used for that'll go a long way in solving it, because that's a very strategic location. Everybody talked and they were talking about doing these facilities up in Central Florida and moving, these inland ports to kind of solve that. But convenience is convenience. That's one of the reasons I think up until now Homestead Industrial hasn't developed like it has, because people prefer to drive to Medley. It's almost the same distance, but it's the convenience of doing that. So that's the situation with that. Where are these mechanics going to go? It's tough, because as a landlord, I can only raise my rent to them to a certain point before they can no longer afford it. And so the seesaw is when an alternate use is going to pay you more and it's a cleaner use, that's kind of where you're going and where they're going to go. I mean, Jennifer and you guys, and you both you're aware of all that area between 72nd and the Palmetto, between Bird and Miller, that area that there was a bunch of auto places in there, and they're all getting displaced because the rents in that market have gone so incredibly high. The other area that was off of Coral Way behind where BJ's, all that area, there was a lot of land that would have worked for that, and that was bought by Trammell Crow, and they're going to develop a bunch of apartment units because it has that zoning along the Ludlam Trail. So yeah, it's getting tough there. And even if you move everybody out and you say, let's get them out and put them in as far west away from everybody, there's no land out there because Medley and Hialeah Gardens are pretty much developed all the way to urban development boundary. So where are they going to go? Maybe all of them to Homestead, where nobody, nobody else wants to go.
Gus, how many square feet of industrial have you developed and managed over your career?
Jesus Christ, I don't know.
He told you not to ask numbers.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, my bad.
It's several million square feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
maybe 3 or 4. I would have to get my HP 12C out.
I've seen you with that thing. You're dangerous with that thing.
Spoken like a true CCIM.
Yeah. Exactly. the reason why I ask is because you have, I think that this has forced you to become very proficient with zoning and with, all of the municipal guidelines that come along with developing. But you also have done a lot of deals with institutional buyers and REITs and the like. A lot of the majority of, commercial brokers in South Florida do smaller type deals. Give us a little insight. What is it like to work with an institutional investor, with a REIT, and to work a deal out with them?
So first of all, to do that, you have to be able to really hold your liquor, because the REITs all send their junior 20, late 20-year-old guys down to South Florida to do all their scouting. And these guys want to do all their showings. By 2:30, 3 o'clock, be done, go back to the hotel, shower, and go out partying. So
you still get your Saturday nights in.
Yes, Friday. They usually do Wednesday and Thursday because it's cheaper for them to fly back on Thursday afternoons, and they're getting paid. But that's actually true. They send the young guys. The other part is it's very cold cut, very numeric in how they look at items. The first deal that I did was institutional. We had bought in Miami Lakes from Ed Easton a 260,000 square foot industrial little park. They were 40,000 square foot buildings and then a 10,000 square foot office building in the front. We bought it with the idea of tearing it down and redeveloping the entire site. Then the economy tanked in 2006, and we retrenched, leased out the entire project, and we owed very little because we had bought it as a redevelopment, so it was almost land value, and the prices had just started going up. So we decided to sell it and take that money that we had in there parked and use it for other stuff, like buy a house and a car and that, the crazy stuff that you do. And I called somebody in Atlanta because I read an article that this company had bought a property in Orlando, and they were in Atlanta. I cold called the guy, and he goes, "No, I'm not your buyer, but I'll give you somebody. They're going to call you. I'll pass your information on." So I received a phone call. "Hi, this is John Lax. I'm with Blackstone." And I thought, yeah, right, sure. We heard about your property in Miami Lakes. Can we go down there on Tuesday to see it? This is Thursday. I'm like, sure. Very mechanical, very structured in the way they do the transaction. What I didn't know is that they were buying a portfolio in Weston and one in Doral, and Miami Lakes was in the middle, so it made sense for them to buy it. Very thorough, very number-oriented. Some of the other REITs that we've sold stuff to are not as detailed in that. I would tell you the last 3 years, post-COVID and right before, there was a lot of speculative buying where you would see them run the numbers and make assumptions that I would not, but if they're buying my property and they want to make that assumption, good for them. But it's kind of slowed down a little where now everybody's kind of really, again, hammering down their numbers. How is it at the end to work with them? The people that they send are the rather young ones, and most of these institutions, by the time it gets up to the senior level, they've already done so much analysis and these giant thick packages that if you make it to that point, you're almost guaranteed that you're going to get a sale. Oh.
Do they tend to try to renegotiate the deal further down the road?
So the real only renegotiations that I've seen, and we're pretty clear this is the number and it is if you find something structural or there's something in the deal of the roof. We had somebody retrade us at the very end because their roofing number came in way more than what they thought originally, and I had told them what it was going to be, and I was right and they were wrong. So they came back and they retraded some for that, but they were paying so much money that you just go whatever, and you give them a discount as long as they're going to close next week.
I find and I think anybody who's listening to this is going to agree that I'm always amazed at your brain. Your capacity for recall. Not true, not true. Your capacity for recall is incredible, and the way that you absorb and process information. So, we got a lot of young commercial agents listening. So how do you tell us about your process of what is it that you read every day? How do you keep up with everything that's happening in your sector, in your Miami market, and in the economy at large?
So I read everything pretty much. South Florida Business Journal, Real Deal, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, Daily Business Review, South Florida Business Journal, I already said, Daily Business Review, just about everything. Now, when I say read, I don't necessarily read like people that sit there and read the entire thing, cover to cover, whatever. I'll skim through and find things that are interest or related to our business, and read those, and then read all the news stories. But it's a lot, and I tell people from when they get in, you have to read. Instagram isn't going to help you learn anything. You need to actually read, trade, the builder magazines, the real estate magazines. You have to be able to get an understanding of everything that's happening. I'm very lucky because since I was young, I would retain all this useless information. My mother, when I was young, would bring Newsweek and Time magazine home, and I would read those and retain. I'm really good at Jeopardy. Retain all this information, and it works for my brain for real estate. Everybody knows that guy that can tell you in 1978 the batting title in the American League went to Cal Ripken Jr. I have no idea, but I retain the stupid stuff like that for real estate. And as you mentioned before, born and raised here, it's really important because if you remember what was there 3 tenants ago, or what was there before they tore it down, or where you can go, it's really helpful in making analysis of acquisition and or leasing.
Do you have photographic memory?
No.
Damn.
Pretty darn close.
Pretty close.
Not even close. And I'm colorblind, so there would be a black and white photograph.
He's colorblind, but he bleeds orange and green.
Yes, absolutely.
I love it.
So I've got to ask you about that crocodile painting, because we both commented on it. He's got this beautiful crocodile painting behind him. Tell us a little bit about that. It's very Miami.
It is very Miami. Those are oh my God! What National Geographic? They did a series of endangered species, and that's the one that I have. They have all sorts of stuff. I also have, which I'm not going to spin you around, but I have
good.
On all my walls, I have Andy Warhol. He did also a series of endangered species where he did an elephant, a tiger, a zebra, all these animals, and I have them all over the place.
No commercial real estate agents up there in the endangered species list, right?
No.
Contrary to what people say.
There's a frog that I could put a couple of names on him. Salami.
So, and tell us a little bit. I know that you obviously have a lot of industrial knowledge and you know just about everybody in the industry, but I also know that you're amazing at sitting at the bar with a glass of wine and networking. Tell us a little bit about your networking and your community service with your involvement, who else you network with.
Networking is extremely important, to meet and networking with your peers and people that are in your business. I tell that to the YPNs, and I stress it every time when from a board capacity, Miami Association, when we're going to have events, I always try to stress that it's great to have 22 speakers where you're sitting in your chair for 14 hours, but when you get 800 people in a room, the greater benefit to everybody is to meet each other. Yes, you can learn what's being taught and you can get the stuff that they're doing, but you can do that in a much shorter time span. I think particularly commercial real estate agents have a short attention span and a good capacity to understand stuff that's of importance to them. networking is one of the keys, and it's helped me immeasurably. And also the benefit of having grown up here and been in this business so long that I have a lot of friends that started with me in their careers that are now the ones that are not in jail are either senior bankers, lenders, and in corporations, and that's also important. But that's part of your networking that you start. My involvement, obviously, with the board. I'm chairman-elect, and Inez may not come back from her vacation, so I may have to take over sooner.
I know. I saw. I'm going to go join her.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
shout out to Inez Seguedes Garcia. She's the 2023 chairman of the board for the Miami Association.
Currently in the Avocos socializing with the water swimming pig.
And I think it was chasing her, going, "Come here, come here."
She probably had a mojito he wanted.
Yes. My involvement at University of Miami, I'm on the Citizens Board, which is the cheaper version of the Board of Trustees. You don't get asked to donate millions of dollars, but you have pretty good involvement with stuff that's happening. I'm beyond crazy. It's a borderline stupid football fan. Someday I'll learn, but I haven't learned yet. We signed like some high school kid yesterday. I was like all excited.
So now you're going to have to figure out where they build their stadium so you can buy a multifamily to park some cars.
You know what? I think for the very long-term future, it's staying where it is. There isn't a push to. Tropical Park would have been perfect when it was offered a few years ago. Right now, it's not in the works, and it would be great because I could pretty much now walk, and later on I'll buy one of those golf
scooters.
carts. Yeah, no, a golf cart scooter. That you can fall off of a scooter.
You can fall off on
I meant the 3-wheel scooter.
My scooter will have railings on it so that I can't fall off to the sides, and a seatbelt. You do have adult beverages at the football games.
This is true.
So Gus, a couple of kind of final questions here, but
one other quick thing. You asked me about involvement for many years, and Jennifer knows I was involved very heavily with the city of Coral Gables for their entire business improvement district, and we helped push through all the sidewalk improvements, all the redevelopment of Miracle Mile and Giralda. That was 16 years of banging my head against a governmental wall to get that done, but it's done now, and I think after the 4 or 5 years that it's been finished, you're really starting to see a benefit with all the restaurants and night life and activity that you're getting into downtown Coral Gables. And I use that as an example with other municipalities that are struggling with what to do and how to figure out. And nobody wanted to be the next South Beach, and South Beach is their own stuff, and Wynwood is their own stuff, but you can still have a downtown area thriving and surviving if you do it intelligently.
Yeah, and the community engagement that whole area brought. I mean, it really did revitalize it. There's activity there all the time.
Yep.
So kudos and thank you for all the work. 16 years. Oof, you got the patience of a saint. You can't sit for more than 15 minutes to listen to something, but you can bang your head against a wall for 16 years. That's impressive.
Yeah, and I was the president of that board 3 different times. It's like you wouldn't learn, right? I'm like, okay, I'll do it again.
It's going to serve you well
a
next year.
For punishment.
Yeah, it's going to be to our benefit.
What's your question, Fernando?
He forgot.
No, yes, I did, but I just remembered. First of all, let me just clarify something. The batting title in 1978 for the American League was Jim Rice, who also won the MVP.
Jim Rice, he was with the Red Sox. Are you kidding?
He was with the Red Sox. Absolutely. I did. Ron Guidry won as the Cy Young.
Ron Guidry
won the Cy Young. That's correct. Who also won the pennant that year. You know a little stick. There you go. So, what do you I don't know if you're much of a person that looks, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, where you're looking at your investments and development. But, how do you see our market on the industrial side in South Florida? What are you seeing as obstacles and opportunities ahead?
Across across the board with the exception of office buildings, because I really don't track that in my brain. Industrial right now, we're still, when you do the statistics, and I'm not good at statistics, but when you do them on per square foot needed per person in your market, we are so behind compared to cities like New York, New Jersey, Chicago, Los Angeles, which are the main port areas. We're so behind on that, and we're kind of out of land to do that. And even with Live Local, that now you can build apartments on industrial land at a higher density, we may lose some. In my 5 and 10 year, I don't really go past 10 years, because I'm hoping that in 10 years, my ass is, I don't know, on an island or probably in Tuscany somewhere. I'm sorry, my tail.
It's okay. It's okay. You're good. You're good.
You're good.
But just the sheer demand that you're seeing down here for multifamily, for industrial retail, yes, and it's picked up again. But in my world, the industrial world, the sheer demand that you have is crazy. There is much more availability now. There was a period maybe 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, before COVID and that blip, you couldn't find 100,000 square foot industrial building. I had a tenant that was looking for one, and we couldn't. We had to wait until one was actually ground up built to be able to move into it, because there was no availability. Right now there is, but it's minimal. There's more 30 and 40,000 square foot spaces available, but there's just too much demand. Where you're getting vacancy is because, for example, Blackstone bought PS Business Parks, the entire company nationwide, and by virtue of that, they own Miami International Commerce Center, which is the real first industrial development built west airport in that now Doral area. Those are 1980s type warehouses, older, less functional. They made a determination that as your lease was up, they were going to rent all those warehouses at $25 a square foot, irrespective of whether your lease was at $15. So you're getting vacancies when people do that. Those guys are moving somewhere else and or staying and paying. But they made that determination. But those are smaller examples where you're going to get bubbles of vacancy, which eventually get absorbed. It's the craziest I've seen. Every year gets a little crazier. By virtue of how I am, I'm always looking at the bad side and saying, okay, where can it go wrong? What can happen? Having seen that already several times in my career, what can affect your stuff? But in our market, this is truly the first time in my career that you have so many people moving into South Florida at all levels of income. And that's huge. That I think will prevent us, even if there's other effects in the market, interest rates or, inflation is already getting under control. But if governmental, political, I think just that sheer volume will keep our market performing at where it is, hopefully past the 10-year Gus's work sunset window.
Just out of curiosity, was that client the Custom Veterinary Services?
Oh, yes. Yes. Are you Googling this stuff?
No, it's so funny. We're doing another podcast on pets. And when I came across this and I'm like, oh my gosh, but that one's going to come up first. So I thought that was hilarious when you said 100,000 square feet in a new building. I'm like, oh my gosh.
160,000. And that company, the owner who now sold a portion to a giant fund, started that in a little warehouse by Miami Airport. He's one of my closest friends. And every, couple of years he would call me and go, I need space. And we moved him into like 8 spaces in a project that he had down there. Then we bought a 40,000 square foot building in Hialeah, and they went from 40 to 150.
Wow.
So even with the skyrocketing price of insurance, tightening of credit, all the other, items that you mentioned, you feel that just because of the fact that we have so much demand, such little supply, and maybe even a reduction of that supply because of things like the Live Local Act, that, the market for industrial, I know,
Please,
I'm going to get in trouble for that.
put your phone to mute.
That
Look,
it wasn't mute. Somebody was calling me 3 times.
No, other than the buzzkill of talking about insurance on a Friday, that to me is the biggest threat we have to our market. Unfortunately, we are where we are with that, but you're starting to see it. Today there was an article on insurance in the New York Times talking about Florida. The fact that farmers left the market has kind of perked everybody's ears. In Tallahassee, and you were with me, Fernando, correct? I was the insurance guy. Every time we walked into somebody's office, that was my, hey, what are we going to do about this? And I think back in February, they still didn't understand the full effect or what the wave that was coming. And I kept telling them, yes, I'm the wealthy developer. I'm complaining because I paid too much and you're not going to pay attention to me. But when your constituents start, that's where we are now. You're seeing it on the news every day. There's stuff and it's bubbling up. I just don't know if our government at this point still has the functionality to address the problem, but they sure as heck better, because that'll put the brakes on this gravy train of increasing rents. And you're going to have to, as an investor, make less money because, again, you can only pass through a certain amount to them. But it dismays me when the answer or what I hear coming out of Tallahassee about farmers moving out is that, that's just a woke ISG company or ESG company that is using Florida as an excuse because they don't want to invest here. No, unfortunately, our state government isn't paying attention to what they should to be able to push regulations and or rules to these companies.
And a lot of the insurance has nothing to do with where they are. Farmers is also pulling out of California because of the wildfires. So I think it's a global issue, right? Insurance is, and we've talked about this before in another episode about how what happens over in Europe or the Middle East insurance-wise also affects us over here. So I think that whole system needs to be looked at. But
one last thing on insurance, understand that the insurance company, I'm running out of time, the insurance companies are going to start coming out looking for a governmental backstop for major catastrophes like hurricanes. And this strategy of pulling out of Florida and California and putting pressure isn't, because California is Democratic, Florida is Republican, so it doesn't have to do with that. But it's going to be an industry push that's going to come out asking the federal government to backstop their losses so that going in, they know how much money they're going to make. Now, go ahead, Fernando.
Yeah. No, we've been through this and we've looked at it from so many different, perspectives, and definitely the reinsurance market and the spreading out of those, of that risk, even globally, is still not enough to, for the insurance companies to stay here in Florida and places like California, to your point. So I know one of the things that Jennifer and I have bonded over is our frustration over the lack of transparency that exists sometimes in our industry as commercial real estate brokers and agents. And even though I know that you don't have the patience to be a teacher, I do, genuinely feel that you are a great mentor to so many people because you are always open to have conversations about commercial real estate, to share your knowledge, to share what you've learned. You're very open about that. And I see that a lot of people always come up to you and ask you questions. And so I wanted to ask about that approach. Why do you, where does that approach come from? But more importantly, as an industry, especially in the commercial sector, we skew more older. It's very hard for a young person to break into commercial real estate, on the brokerage side, transaction side. And so I'm wondering if you have any thoughts as to how we can make that a better experience.
So it's extremely important to, put some time aside and teach when you're asked, because if the younger people that are starting in our business, but not necessarily younger, but anybody, if they can't learn things at least somewhat correctly, it's just going to increase the frustration that we have, and it's going to really make it difficult to transact. I'm a big fan of our board having the YPNs because that's the perfect age. You know, when the little bird is born, that it imprints. That's the perfect age to get these people to imprint with correct business practices and how to learn to be a good commercial practitioner. You have to give your time. Although I will tell you, I was at the YPM meeting this week, and there was a comment that they needed instructors that were less old white men. And then they immediately all looked at me, and but that's understandable. The problem is that there's not, this is what somebody that's going to teach them about real estate, commercial real estate, doing it correctly looks like. So you just have to tailor the message as well. You 10 seconds or less with the young kids.
They have a shorter attention span than you do.
Oh, it's this. Stand there on the phone.
That's true. They're multitasking, Gus. They're multitasking.
Yep.
I would love nothing more than to see Gus walk into a meeting with a T-shirt that says 10 seconds or less, guys. That's all I can give you.
10-second Gus, that's what you're calling.
You're not on the whatever, the board of directors next year.
No, he's not.
I'm not.
You're not. Oh, so you're gonna miss all the fun.
Well, I'm gonna hear it.
We're gonna get some YPNs to record it.
Exactly. We're gonna get a second hand.
You're such a tease. Now I've got FOMO.
I know.
10 words or less. Only action items.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, Jennifer, you could jump back in.
Yeah.
I'm turning out, but you can jump back in.
All righty, Gus. We did give you a heads up about stats, right? That there's a fun fact that we do at the end of every episode.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, as our guest, we'll let you go first.
Okay, Jim Rice won the American League $1.4 billion of Italian red wine imported into the United States in 2022.
Wow.
Repeat that.
1.4 billion.
Wow.
Of which 20% went to my house. Unfortunately.
I've seen it.
That's
I love that stat.
A crazy stat.
Gus, that incidentally, since I have you on the line, when is that bottle of wine that I gave you going to be ready to be opened?
It should be ready. I think it was a 15 or a 16. It's ready. It's ready now. Good.
All right, we gotta make time for that. I love it. Go ahead.
So mine, since we're talking about industrial, and I think it's appropriate given what you said about how little we have built up in the National Association of Realtors Commercial Update for the first quarter of 2023. First quarter, the vacancy rate for industrial was 1.9%. Down from 2.7% in Q1 2022, and market rents were up $19 to $19 a square foot. I don't know where, because that seems low for most of the places that I've been looking at, but $19 a square foot, up from $16 in Q1 2022. What do you think it's going to look like for the second quarter? Do you think we're going to be in line?
Yeah, we'll be in line. Maybe I don't think the vacancy may tick up if they consider some of the new projects that have come online. And we mentioned Blackstone. Blackstone's on a mandate to build out everything that they bought, all the land, and they've got a lot of land, so they've got about 1 million some square feet coming in. You have bridge building monsters in Doral and monsters up on by the Turnpike North. If you add those in, you may get a blip in vacancy, but I can still tell you there are pockets in Hialeah where the vacancy is negative. And what I mean by that is if you're empty on Friday, you'll be full on Monday. It's still pretty all within reason. If the market is $15 and you want $20, then you're gonna sit vacant. But if you're renting within market parameters, they're still there. the number of phone calls and that people, are looking for spaces is still there. The demand is still there.
Yeah, the inventory that we had was only up slightly in Q1 of 2023. It was up at 260, almost 263 million square feet, up from 259 million square feet.
Yeah.
But I know, so it was
There's some big
minor blip,
projects,
but some big ones are coming too.
right now.
Well,
But their rents are also significantly higher, so we'll probably see an increase in vacancy, but at the same time see an increase in the per square foot price, correct?
I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
well, Gus.
We haven't had to reduce rents to anybody in the last, I don't know how many years.
Yeah. Well, Gus is a big charitable guy. He has, funded a lot of educational institutions throughout the country, putting 2 kids through school. And and because, it's the summer and I got a lot of friends that are, sending their kids away to college, I'm going to tell you that sales of rental housing for college students hit a record high $22.9 billion in 2022. So that's my stat of the day. And just like 20% of all the wine is going to, Gus's house, he can account for a good percentage of that 22.6 billion.
Still funding a project in New York.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Gus. It's always fun.
Gus.
My ribs hurt from laughing.
I know.
Because you're smart, but you're funny, and
Thank
your
you.
delivery is, I think it's so much easier
I know, Gus.
to take because your delivery is amazing.
This is so
and
much fun.
we love you.
Absolutely.
All right,
And
guys.
thank you for taking your time on a Friday.
Yeah.
And I think next time if we do this again and you become a repeat guest, we're gonna have to do it in maybe the backyard of your house over a glass of wine. That's the only way to make it
I
better.
think this works perfect at the bar across the street at Zucca.
There you go. I was thinking the same thing,
Yeah, yeah.
Bart.
I mean, with this heat, the backyard's useless. All right, guys.
Have
Thank
a
you,
great
buddy.
weekend.
Bye.
Yeah,
Good weekend.
absolutely.
Bye.
Bye.